Okay, welcome to another Liquid Bullet Productions. Another great guest for you today from the martial art world. Tang Soo expert, autistic ambassador, 6 times grand champion, 2 gold medals in the World Championships, and a Coach of the Year 2019, Gus Rogers. Welcome, Gus.
Thanks so much for having me, Lee. It's great to be on here.
Thanks for coming on, Gus. So just going to start with Tang Soo. Obviously, it's a martial art I've heard of, but I don't know much about. So can you just run us through exactly what that is?
So obviously, not to talk down to your audience, but a lot of people I meet don't know what Tang Soo means. But they know what karate means, and they know what taekwondo is. So I often say to people, I say, everyone accepts karate as a word, but no one really thinks about what it means in English. So all karate means in English is open hand, the ability to defend yourself with your hands. And in Korean, that's what Tang Soo means. So Tang Soo is literally Korean karate, but it doesn't make sense if you call it that, because you're calling it a Japanese word. But if you say open hand, no one knows what it means either.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's the godfather to taekwondo. So if you look at jiu-jitsu is the art form of judo, Tang Soo is the art form of taekwondo.
So and that originated in Korea as well.
Korea, yeah, after the Japanese occupation, yeah. So that's why the Japanese karate influence. And again, I think taekwondo and karate and other styles are bigger because they are more sport orientated. And even though, like you listed, we have competitions, but they're very small, and they're more. I call just celebrations of like meeting up with other students and other clubs. It's not seen as a competitive art in that respect.
Awesome. Well, thanks for that, Gus. So before we start, can I just roll you back right to the beginning, a little bit about yourself, where you was born, where you grew up, etc.
So I was born in a small town in Powys, Wales called Brecon. I then moved to Bryn Mawr, and I've lived there for most of my life. So always lived around the South Wales area.
What sort of age did you first get interested into martial arts?
So my dad was a big film influence on me and music influence. And when we were kids, we used to watch, I was probably too young to be watching these films. We watched like Bruce Lee, Jackie Chan, Sonny Chiba, all these classics. And I wanted to do martial arts from a very young age. And I remember my mum signing me up as soon as we moved to Bryn Mawr. It's about 5 or 6, probably the age that most people get into martial arts. And I don't want to badmouth the club because I can't even remember it. But all I remember was going in there and getting beat up by the bigger kids, and I don't really remember learning anything. And I think I went to about 3 lessons, and in my head I just remember thinking, the Karate Kid film is real, and Cobra Kai is real, and unless you know martial arts already, you're not going to do well in these things, and unless you've got a Mr. Miyagi teaching you privately, it won't work. So I kind of just knocked it on the head and said, well, that's not for me, as kids do. And then 5 years later, my brother went through the same journey, about 6 or 7, wanted to do martial arts, and we kind of moved to a town very close to Bryn Mawr called Blanavon, and he went in like you do, always go into the local leisure centre and just do the art that's there, and that was Tang Soo. And after he did it for a couple of months, my mum kind of turned to me and went, "It's not like when you did it. This instructor's really good. You should give it a go." So when I was 13, I gave it a go again, and I say to everyone these days, I said, "There's no good martial arts. There's only good instructors." And me and my brother have a very good instructor, a gentleman called Chris Long, and he taught us for 5 years, and he got me my black belt, and he was the best instructor ever. Absolutely amazing.
When you was young, Gus,
yeah,
how was your sort of upbringing with like other children? Do you have any sort of bullying going on or that type of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I've got the problems of I've got glasses and I'm ginger, and also I didn't know this when I was a kid, but I was actually dyspraxic, so I was the kid in school who couldn't catch a ball and put glass for football teams and things like that. So I just thought I was naturally clumsy. So bullying went on, and before I did the martial art thing, you pretend to fight and you kind of make a fool of yourself. And it was really funny. As soon as I started doing martial arts, I just had a confidence about me where I didn't feel like I needed to scrap with other kids. And again, when I was 13, I was as tall as I am now, just a lot skinnier. And my instructor used to always put me with the adults. And as you know, once you've been hit in the face by an adult when you're a kid, like nothing else really bothers you. So once I started martial arts, when I got into comprehensive and everything, the bullying stopped, because I just think I carried myself in a different way, and I didn't let that stuff affect me. But yeah, it's very common growing up, and I always tell the kids that I teach now, to the parents who are worried about that sort of thing, I say other kids don't mess with people who are confident and strong. If you're confident and strong, no one really messes with you. And if I can give that ability to a child, I always feel good about that.
I agree with that 100%. You get like a different aurora around you, isn't it? When you know what you can do,
Yeah. But you
you're
don't need
not
to say
sitting there
anything, or
afraid, and you're not looking
yeah,
nervous. You're
advertise. You just stand up a little bit taller, and
That's it.
I think when I did martial arts, I made more friends, more confident. I was doing better in school, and those things just didn't bother me. So yeah, I always think I tell people all the time. I say all the good things that happened in my life are because of martial arts.
So, guys, going back to the beginning when you first started your martial arts,
Yeah.
how did you find it? Because martial arts is quite regimental, isn't it? How did you find that sort of discipline?
I loved it. I thought it was great because again, going back to sport, there's sort of this thing of like, you're picked for a team and then you have to win. One of the things, again, I can't speak for all martial arts, but one of the things about my Tang Soo experience was it was this idea of like, if you worked hard at something, you were rewarded. And there were challenges, but I felt very motivated to overcome those challenges. And that's the one thing that I always enjoyed. It was like I found everything difficult. I found stretching difficult. I found the fitness difficult. I found everything difficult. But because I enjoyed it so much, I got really good at it. And again, like going back to school, I could then flip my mind to that mindset of going like, well, I'm not enjoying this, but if I do work as hard as I did in Tang Soo in martial arts, I probably get through this. And that was the motivation to get me through school, work, everything else.
How long did it sort of take you to sort of start going up the ranks?
So in our system, there was a grading every 3 months. And again, when you first go there, you don't understand the process. But I think once I started the process, I was grading every 3 months because I was really keen, and everything I found difficult in the class, I would go back and practice. Now, when I was a kid, and again, no internet back then, and again, the people I trained with, I didn't really see outside because they were all, mostly adults or went to different schools or whatever. I just thought that everyone who went to a martial arts class went home and practiced all the time. It was only years later that I realized not everyone does that, but I would just obsessively like work on kicks and do my forms and practice twirling or whatever it was that we were doing in class. I was always practicing it because I just wanted to be like my instructor. I found my instructor so inspiring. I was like, I want to do the kicks like him. I want to do as many push-ups as my instructor. And I always looked at him as a role model. And that was great for me. I think I needed that in my life, like someone to look up to physically like that, who could do everything and wasn't afraid of everything. I just loved it.
I had the same pretty much with my
Yeah.
sort of needed a male role model in my life, someone to sort
Yeah.
of look up to, and it does help you a lot, doesn't it? Otherwise, you're sort of going off the wrong track and stuff.
Well, an instructor has to be so many things. I mean, they have to physically know all the things, and then they have to be very good at running a class of all different abilities. But they also have to have that, I don't even know what you call it, but that it factor where students don't go there and listen to you. They have to look up to you in some way or another.
Yeah.
And that's again, it's always a mark of what I say is a good instructor.
Yeah. So, guys, what sort of age did you very first start entering competitions, and what did you enter? Because you get obviously the fighting and is
Yeah.
it kata or patterns? It's called in your style.
So again, in Korean it's called hyungs, but it means kata, it means forms, and we have the same kata as Shotokan and many other
Really?
Japanese players. Yeah. So we have all the pyong forms and basai and mahanshi and all those classic forms that most people know. I think I signed up straight away when I was a white belt, and I remember going to a competition. I didn't get anything in the forms, but I got a second in the sparring, and I loved it. And after that, I was always entering Tang Soo competitions within our association, and it was really funny because my instructor, he didn't really tell the students about it, and I have no idea why he didn't tell the students. But I remember the first competition we went to, one of the lads that went there, he had his collarbone separated. Someone axe kicked him on the and he went down really bad. And I remember we spent the evening in a hospital. And I think after that, he was just like, it's not worth my students getting injured for.
Yeah.
So he would let me and my brother and some of my friends go because we'd asked him, but he'd never really talk about it in class. He'd never really advertise it because, again, like he said, like Tang Soo was more about yourself. But I love the traveling. I love meeting people. And I love the challenge, in the competitions. I tell my students all the time, like they go there and they didn't get first place, so they didn't win a medal. And I'd say to them, I go like, look, it took me 11 years until I got a first place. and it's a skill that takes time to learn. But I said once I started winning, I kept, not all the time, but pretty consistently winning, because I put in that work to get where I was. So I always tell my students, it's no rush. You don't have to win the first time. And I actually think that if you did win every time, you just kind of get bored of it.
Yeah, I don't think you'd learn from it either if you won all the
Exactly.
time.
Well, you learn. I go away and like the lessons. I just work harder. I just practice more. And I was very lucky as well that my mother would always film all our tournaments and everything. So I'd watch back the videos so I could, like on the old VHS. And when you paused it, it'd go the cucaracha mode. And yeah, it was just great watching back the videos and trying to improve.
Yeah, I think it helps as well. Like when you step out to fight or do a kata on your own, when you're out there and everyone's watching, that's a lot of pressure, isn't it? From like, if you've never done that before, it's like being up on a big stage and everyone's watching you. So that alone is quite hard for some kids to deal with, isn't it?
But I think those things like tournaments, gradings, demos, that thing of putting yourself out there helps you in life for things like job interviews or speaking on the phone or negotiating if you're running your own business or whatever. All these are life skills that I don't think school gives you the same opportunity in the same way. But I always think that if you can overcome these small obstacles, they help with later obstacles.
So to Gus, can you just run us through your sort of competition sort of life that you've done? Obviously, we touched on a few bullet points at the beginning.
Again, when I first trained, again, no internet and nothing like that. So I think I was very closed off in my early martial arts career. I would go to my club, do what I could inside my association, but I never sort of look out to, other competitions that were going on. So I just did the TANG SOO competitions kind of out of habit, and I always enjoyed them. I've done a couple of other competitions, like done a few kickboxing competitions, very small, and a karate competition here and there, just to see what they were like. But mainly I've done the TANG SOO ones, and I've been able to compete all over Europe and America a couple of times, and yeah, it's been loads of fun. And then recently I've had the opportunity to compete again, and I'm trying to compete as much as possible before I'm not able to anymore.
Yeah.
Recently I've started jiu-jitsu in the last 2 years, and I'd really like to do a grappling tournament because I've never done it before. And again, that would be a really interesting challenge. I'd really enjoy that.
What is that? Japanese jiu-jitsu or the Brazilian jiu-jitsu?
So I was doing Japanese jiu-jitsu before lockdown, but again, because I'm teaching all the time, it's so difficult to do evening classes. So I'm very lucky at the moment that I have a morning jiu-jitsu class I can go to, and I think the instructor has a black belt in Brazilian jiu-jitsu, but he just calls it grappling. Like he teaches, judo there and wrestling. He just calls it grappling, and I do mostly no-gi.
Can I just jump back there? So when you said about you competing all over the world, how did you find going to different countries to compete? And how were the people with you when you get there?
I loved it. Again, I know certain competitions there can be a lot of sort of alpha male and all this stuff. But when I went there, everyone was super friendly, and again, like sometimes you get to go train with them and stuff like that. I would just, it was an excuse for me to go to a country or a place I'd never been to before, to experience things that were there, and I would just use the competition as an excuse for an adventure. Again, but I had great times every time I went to compete within the TANG SOO. I had the best time. I loved it.
Where was it exactly that you won the world championships?
So what happened was, again, like I say, in our little club in Wales, we didn't. No one had been from our club to a world competition, and then my instructor was being presented his 6th Dan over there back in 2012. And I said to him, who's going over with you? And he said, I'm going on my own. I said, well, who's going to film it for your family and everything? He's like, oh, I don't know. And I said, well, I'll come over with you. And he said, are you going to compete? And I said, yeah, I'll compete. And so I went over with him, and I trained for it and everything. And apparently it used to be each used to have a world competition, be a world competition on the even numbered years and a European competition on the odd numbered years. So this is 2012, and they just so happened to make it from then on every year in North Carolina, because that's where they were building their headquarters. So I went to North Carolina in 2012 and 2014, And the first year was really exciting because I'd never been there before. But the second time I went over there, I'd been to the same place again, and it would have been nicer if it was like somewhere different, like another place. But yeah, I'm hoping. Well, again, I have no idea how, but hoping to compete in America again somehow.
So originally, then, when you first won that, when
Yeah.
you won your World Championships,
Yeah.
didn't plan on doing that to begin with. You just was
No.
going to go there with your instructor, and then you ended up winning it.
Well, again, like I had no idea what it was. There was like 2,000 competitors, and again, in our competitions, there'd be like, if you were lucky, 8 or 10 in a group. But in the American competitions, there's like 20, 25 people in a group. So you've got to think of the odds and everyone else being there. And of course, Tang Soo is very big in America. So you just naturally think in your head, before I went there, you just naturally think, oh, the Americans will just beat you. Do you know what I mean? Because they've got, gyms, and they train all the time, and you're in a little leisure center or wherever you are. And I just don't have any expectations at all. Like I said, I wanted to go there and do my best, as I always do, but I didn't have any expectations at all. And that's why I went 2 years in a row. Because you compete in three things. You compete in kata, hand kata, weapon kata, and then sparring. And then they have they add up your points, and it's like 30 points is the grand champion. Does that make sense? So I went over there and I got a gold in weapons, a silver in forms, and then I lost out in the sparring. But I was like, oh, I've been there now. Let's try again. So I went 2 years later and I got the exact same result. I got gold in weapons, silver in forms, and then I got disqualified in the sparring for knocking a guy out. So
Come on, Gus, what happened?
well, it's my own fault. I should have stayed back. I was ahead on points, and then the guy just kept falling over. And as he fell over, I did one of my jumping kicks, and as he was getting off the floor, he hit the top of my foot and then knocked himself out. And I was like, complete accident. And the guy was like, the rules are if you knock someone out, you're disqualified. And I was like, okay. But it kind of took the wind out of my sails. Then I was like, oh, it's too much money to go to America and do all this stuff if you're just going to get disqualified by like just idiots falling about the place.
That's good. Can you tell us a little bit about you? Obviously, 6 times Grand Slam champion as well. Can you run us through that, Gus?
Yeah, so I'd done all this work to go to America in 2012, and then almost a month later, there was a competition in Wales, in Cardiff, and I just flipped the switch totally. I said, well, I was quite selfish, doing all this work going to America. I'll concentrate on my students, because at that time I started teaching in 2010, so I had a small number of students then, and this was like their first big competition they were going to. So I had I can't remember how many students I had, 15 or 20 students entering, and I was concentrating on them. And that's the first time that I ever got a first place in sparring, but I got first in weapons, first, like basically I got the result that I wanted in America at this Cardiff tournament, and I won the grand champion then in Wales in a tournament that my club was hosting. So it was really a really nice end to this journey. Like I worked really hard for America, but then I got this grand champion, and then in subsequent competitions, again, I didn't win every time, but I think that my friend tells me that you worked out how to play the game of sparring. Like, it's not fighting; it's because it's point fighting. It's like protecting your points and win everything. And I just worked out this game that most of the time I'd either win or be very, very close. And I just, after 2012, I just kept winning it. I won it 4 times in UK and twice in Europe. And the one year, I think I won it in the UK and Europe in the same year, 2019. Yeah.
Cool.
So I just went on a nice run then. It was crazy turn of events.
Can you just run us through the rules of the Tang Soo competition? Is it like how many points there is to win, and etc. and what moves score what points?
Yeah, so for a long time I was in an association called the World Tang Soo Association, which again is, I've been told, the biggest Tang Soo organization in the world, and their tournaments, I would say by comparison, were very, very tame. And again, going back to that story about my friend getting his shoulder separated, I would always tell my students, I go like, look, I'd rather take like 30 students to a tournament and all 30 students come back safe than going to the hospital or having an injury or someone quitting because they got hurt so bad in a tournament. So that's the way I would look at it. But I would always say that in our clubs we would spar much harder than the competition. So the forms and weapons are scored the same. They have 5 people judging, and it's like they score it from like 5 to 10 points, and highest point wins. And then the sparring was first to 3 points, so everything was worth a point. But it was very, very, like, hardly any contact. And then recently in September, I left my association, and now I'm with the British Combat Association. So I'm now taking my students to more open Tang Soo tournaments, and it's really crazy because those rules are very different. So they allow contact and they allow punches to the face, and it's not first to 3 points. We've only done a couple of competitions since September. It's like first to 21 points or first to 10 points, and they're a lot faster. And basically, I would say fairer, because you can see the points. It's not people guessing whether that would hit or not hit. So again,
just a quick one there, Gus.
Yeah.
So up to 21 points.
Yeah.
The many fights sort of get more. A lot of them, do they go to full distance rather than?
So I should explain. So in the association, everything was equal. But for example, this competition we did in Cardiff recently in May, a head kick scores 3 points, a body kick scores 2 points, and a punch to the face of the body scores a point. So, for example, you can get up the points, but I think that I haven't seen any matches that have gone to 21 points, because if you get an 11-point lead, they end it. So 2 of the fights that I think I've done, I've got an 11-point lead, and they've just ended it. Again, these are all rules that I'm getting used to as well. But again, I'm kind of enjoying, because I did the association for so many years with the same points, same people, same everything. It was great, but I got very used to it. Now I'm going to competitions where, for example, this competition I went up to in Stockton, they scored 2 points for a counter, and I was like, well, that's cool. That's different. So yeah, I guess you've been to a lot of competitions where the rules are different, but there's no standardized rules now. Now I've left the association. I haven't been anywhere where every Tang Soo tournament is the same. So there's probably Tang Soo tournaments that I haven't been to that have got completely different rules again.
Yeah. So guys, can I just ask you a little bit about your teaching now? So what age did you start to become an instructor and sort of hand on the information?
So if I can go back a bit in my story, because I think it's quite prevalent where I came up. I got my black belt when I was 18, back in 1999. But my instructor, the one I told you, Chris Long, who was great, he retired because of a knee injury. Now at the time, I had a issue, Osgood Slatters, which I was growing too quickly. Like I said, I was tall for my age, and with all the impact from the martial arts, I saw the pain I was having in my knee, and then I saw my instructor retire, and I was like, I don't want to be like 26 or whatever, not being able to walk. So I just, at 18, you get your black belt and you go like, well, that's it. That's all I have to do. And then I didn't do any martial arts for about 5 years. And then a random conversation with a old training partner, he was like, how's your knees? And I said, well, I don't train anymore, so they're fine. And he said, do you ever think about coming back? And I said, yeah, I'd like to come back. But I was like, who's teaching? He's like, oh, the master is teaching now. Like, basically the guy who taught my instructor was teaching the class. And I was like, well, that would be worth coming back to. And I'd finished university and I was in a different place, so I could basically like afford to go. And so yeah, I trained for another 5 years. So, and then I got my second dan and eventually my third dan. And in 2010, I started teaching. And it was basically a conversation with my instructor. My instructor was like, you're a second dan now, you should start teaching. But again, I never really looked for it. I don't really think like that. I just enjoy training and going for it. But in 2010, I started teaching again, just as a hobby, something to do. But then, as you probably know, your class gets bigger and the demands get bigger. So when I had more students, when they were a higher belt, I had to start teaching twice a week. And then we got into a problem where our little room where we taught in the leisure centre wasn't big enough anymore, and there was no other slots to go to. So I looked for a unit in 2017, and then it got to about 2018, and I was trying to keep down a job as well. And I was like, I can't do both. I can't have this school and this gym and do a job. So I left my job in 2019. And then in 2022, I got another unit, and now we have 200 students. And it's just all these things keep happening, and I never planned any of them. It's just been this roller coaster that I just accept and go, well, you know, if I'm helping people, if people are enjoying the training, if it's all going well, I'll keep doing it.
How did you find the transition from obviously being taught and then to teaching? Did you find that difficult, or did it sort of go flow quite nice for you? Or?
So I'd already done like a lot of, I'd already helped out a lot of instructors. Like, you know, for example, my master instructor I was on about, there was a period where he was very ill and he was coming to the class, but he was watching and I was teaching. So I'd done a lot of teaching, but I think I was teaching in a selfish way where I would just teach things that I enjoyed teaching.
Yeah.
So like I was teaching everyone jump kicks every week, and not everyone needs to learn that every single week. And then when I started to have my own club, I started to realize what they needed. And I also looked at my own skills. And again, you know, you can train in a way where you can get by and you can do techniques that work for you and blah, blah, blah. And then I was like, no, I've got to make sure my techniques look great, because again, I wanted to be inspiring like my instructor. So that we have a kick called a diagonal kick, in Taekwondo is called a twist kick. Very difficult. I always hated it as a color belt. And then when I became a teacher, I was like, oh, I've got to get good at this kick because eventually I have to teach it. So again, I found it a challenge of, I need to make my technique look as good as possible. I need to explain things properly. I need to give my students the why. So it was a gradual thing, but I think over the first 4 years of teaching, my mindset changed from this is a hobby, this is something I have to do, to something, oh, this is now something I want to do, and I want to do really, really well. But it was definitely a transition. I like being the white belt in the room. I like the guy who doesn't know anything and gets the most out of the class. I don't mind being the person now who everyone asks for questions, but again, if I could switch around and be the trainer, it'd be great. But I love seeing my students progress. That's the one thing I love. I love seeing the students grow and do really well.
Gus, how do you find it on a personal level for you, watching your students compete compared to when you compete? Is it just as nervous, just as nerve-wracking, or is it probably worse because you're not in control?
I don't think I get nervous for them. I tell you, the students I get nervous for is the students who haven't trained for it. Like, because sometimes students they sign up for it, and I don't stop them because they say they're going to train for it and then they haven't. And I don't want that student to be disappointed. The students who go in and I know they've trained hard and I know they're going to do their best, whatever the result, I'm fine with it. But the students who go in who haven't trained for it, I'm always like, you're going to come out now and you're going to blame everyone but yourself. I'm going to have this conversation with you, and I don't want to have this conversation with you. So I almost like want to pull the student out before they train.
Yeah,
because that's always disastrous.
yeah. To be fair, I've done it myself. Took fights on like short notice or not trained, and yeah, it's just been not a good result. Let's say.
Exactly. I always
you've only got yourself to blame. So
if you've trained as hard as you can and the other person beats you, they were just really good. You've done everything you can, and you can't ask for anything more than that.
So to Gus, you also help out with a lot of autistic people. Can you just run us through, you know, your involvement in that and you know how you're going forward with that?
Yeah, I mean, again, like everything else I'm going to tell you in this story is complete accident. We in our TANG SOO we have this thing of probably other martial arts have got it as well. Like, it's called tiny tigers. Like, basically students who are like 4 to 7 years old. I would always say it like left from right. Like, parents would always ask me, what age can my child start? And I go, do they know they're right from left? I know if they know they're right from left, they can start with me. I was like, up until then, go to another instructor, blah blah blah. And I'd always palm them off. And I remember this lad came to my class, and he was 8 years old, and I could already see that he was going to struggle. But I was like, oh, I'll give him all the support I can. And he was running around my dojang like a penguin, making penguin noises. And I was like, oh, this kid's not going to handle it. So I'm about to have the chat with the mum, going like, oh, he's not going to be able to handle this class. It's too much for him. And then she gives me this look like I've taken him everywhere. Like there's no way he can go. And at this time I had the gym, so I had the space. So I said I could teach him privately. You know, I could do something. So for a year I worked with this lad, and it was me learning how I could get someone who, how can I put it, didn't naturally pick it up like everyone else did. And I found different methods of getting him to do the skills that like, you know, like in like you said, the martial arts is very military. Everyone's in a line, everyone does the kick at the same time, and I would make it way more interactive, lots more games, things like that. And I basically taught myself how to teach him, and he graded privately a few times. And then what happened was other instructors in my association heard about me, and when they would get students like this lad, they would send him to me. And then I started incorporating more. And then I sort of went, well, I don't want them to stay in private lessons forever. I kind of want them to join the class because they're missing out on the experience. So the idea was, how do you get them from someone who can't handle a class to someone who's in a class and doesn't need any support? And that's basically what I've done since 2021. You know, over lockdown, everything got stopped. And then when we came back, I basically made a big call saying, you know, we'll take all students, all ages, no matter what disability. But it was mainly students with autism. And we do privates when they can handle the routine. We bring them into a small class. We call it ASD, TSD. And there's only 8 students, and I often have helpers. And then they'll grade either privately or with a small group. And when they can handle that, they move into the main class. And I've got a student who started with me 5 years ago. He's now a black belt candidate, and he's actually going in and helping those students in the small ASD class. It's wonderful. But what I want to do is, I mean, I would like somehow to help other martial arts instructors like yourself take my methodology that I've worked out and apply it to your martial art, because I don't know anything about autism. All I know about is martial arts. But I think if you can introduce people into it in a staggered way, they can do it too. I just think it's that thing of, like, if you come into a class and everyone's noisy and there's all this anxiety anyway, they're going to fail.
Too much going on at once, and they're distracting.
That's why I put a lot of my posts as, you know, hashtag martial arts for all, because I know myself, like I told you earlier, I wasn't the kid you'd naturally think would be any good at martial arts, and I did well at it over a very long time, as I've explained so far in this interview. And students can do it as well, and my autistic students have done tournaments and they have won medals, and they've done demonstrations and they've gone to seminars and everything else. And I know other students do this, but I just think there might be a way of having this formula for bringing them in.
When you said they compete, do they compete in a special category? Because I know judo is like an autistic category, but
so it was a very proud moment for me. I actually invented, in my old association, I invented a autistic category, where basically they just perform, and they don't do sparring. It's called a belt tag game, but they get to be on a stage with like hundreds of people watching them, which is huge for them anyway. But some of my autistic students have competed in regular competitions, and they have that option. So that's good as well. And one thing, now that we're in our own association, we did our own club tournament in February, and we had about 14 autistic students all competing with each other, all from the same club. And watching all the parents watch them was one of the most magical moments there. Like, the camera was on the students, but I wish the camera had been on the parents. The parents watching them all do so well, because it boosts their confidence and it does such amazing things for them. Like, one of my mottos that I do with the students is, I go, I'm going to build your confidence, and once I build it up, I'm going to add adversity, and then we'll build your confidence, then we'll do it again, and we keep going like that, and it's working out really well so far.
Nice. Well done, mate. It's really good work you're doing there. It's good. Can I just ask now? Obviously, you got Coach of the Year 2019 as well.
Yes.
How did you get that, or was it from what we're just talking about led into that, or?
Yeah, I mean, I started that, and I left. 2019 was a crazy year because we had the gym, we just gone past the 100 student mark, and it was the South Wales Argus. Someone had forwarded to me and said, "Oh, you should nominate yourself." So I think, like everything else, you nominate yourself, and then other people sort of vote for you, and they fill out forms and write testimonials, and then there's a judging panel. And we were just excited to be asked along to it because it was sort of national newspaper, and we just got all dressed up and went with our tuxes, and then we won the award for Coach of the Year. So it was a crazy thing, and it was really nice event. And I never even imagined that such a thing could be possible. But again, what what a lot of my students say about my teaching method is that they say, like, I go above and beyond to try and help them out. And I think that same, what I was talking about before, is like I would go back and practice everything and make sure it was correct. It's like I say to my students, I'll do everything I can to help you achieve your dreams as well. Like I try and do that for everyone. Again, when you've got 200 students, it's quite difficult, but luckily I've got a good instructor team that helps me out at the moment to give me help. But again, I genuinely want them to succeed in everything they do, not just in the class, like outside the class as well. I want them to be the person they want to be.
Gus, can I just ask you, who inspires you in martial arts? Have you got anyone that you sort of can watch or look at and it sort of really inspires you?
Yeah. Again, obviously when I was growing up, I talked about all those film icons. I look up to them, but a gentleman that I really look up to, and a person who really helped me when I was lost. In 2014, after that tournament, my master instructor, he retired as well due to health reasons, and I was lost again. I was like, I lost my instructor when I was a black belt, and now I've lost another instructor. It's like, what am I doing? And I was like, I really don't like to be in charge. Like, some people love being in charge. They love being like the head of their organization or the top dog. I was like, I don't like it at all. Like, I always like having, what I would, it's not the best term for it, but a boss, someone I can turn to when I'm lost. And I turned to a gentleman called Ian Abernathy. And I don't know if you've heard of him, but he is a Wadaru practitioner from Cumbria. And what he does is he tries to take the forms, the katas, and try and reverse engineer them and do, it's called bunkai. In Korean, we call it bunhai. But he reverse engineers the forms and says, like, they're fighting methods and they've been put into this pretty pattern to help people remember the moves, but they really should be combative. And I remember in 2014, 15, going to his seminars and following his podcast and everything and realizing this is what I want to do. I want to be able to break down the forms for Koreans, and I want to be able to explain everything, because I remember when I was, learning, I don't think it was the instructor's fault or anything, but it was a lot of like, don't ask questions. You'll learn this later on. You'll learn this when you're black belt. You'll learn this when you're master. And there's a lot of, like, I would call it gatekeeping or secrets or things like that. And I just like this Ian Abernathy, because I'd go to his seminars and go, yeah, but what about this move? What does this do? And he just talked me through it and go, we're going to drill this now. And I was like, I want to teach like that. And since I've been involved with Ian Abernathy, I've met other people like that. Like, when I met you, the UK Martial Arts Show, I go to places like that and meet people like Martin with the sticks, and I go, I want to learn sticks, and he go, I'll teach you. And there's all these people out there who I just discovered this whole world of people who just want to help you. Like, like Peter Constantine and my new Tang Soo boss, Dan Bernardo, they just want to give you time, and they want to give you, and I have the utmost respect for all those people, because I am still that white belt little kid in the room going, I don't understand, or I can't do it, or it's too hard. Can you help me? And people go out their way to help you. And I love that. I love that so much. I love the martial arts community because of that.
Yeah, I find that myself. I think it's changed a lot over the years, though, because when I very first started karate when I was a kid, it was very much you trained karate. Every other sort of martial art was rubbish.
Yeah,
and it was quite. If you said I'm going to judo, you probably wouldn't be be frowned upon. Where now everyone seems to have involved and everyone helping each other, don't they? Rather than every discipline being against each other.
It's gone full circle. I mean, this is what, and again, I don't know this history for sure, but that's how it was historically. That's why Okinawa was the melting point of all these styles, like karate and everything else like that, because you'd have Chinese ships and Korean ships and Japanese ships all landing on a small island, and they're bored. They haven't got anything to do. There's no TV or anything, so they just fight each other. And they go, I love that move. Like, there's this story, and again, it's a legend story. It's not true, but do you know a form like Teki or Nahanchi? Do you know this form?
I've heard of them, but I don't know them.
But it's the grappling form. Basically, it's the form where you're really close in. It's loads of grappling. It's a lot of people's favorite form. So there's this. I'm going to mess up this story, but there's this bodyguard to the king, Matsumura. He's the Nahanchi man, right? And he does everything for the king. And then there's this pirate comes under Okinawa, and he's called Chinto or Jindo in Korean. And he's coming down from the mountain, and he's stealing food and beating people up, and then going back to the mountain and everything else like that. So the king sends Matsumura to the hill to sort him out, and he tries to use the Nahanshi on this pirate Chinto, and Chinto uses all these moves that Matsumora's never seen before, and it's basically a stalemate. And afterwards, he stops the fight and he goes like, "You're really good. I tell you what, I'll make you a deal. You teach me all the moves that you did on me, and I'll give you a ship and get you off Okinawa." And they just exchanged ideas, and that's how the form Chinto came up, and it's known as the Nahanshi killer. And I love stories like that, and I think that's what everyone's doing now with the internet and social media. Like, you'll see a post, or I'll see a post, and I'll go, "That guy's got the right idea. I'll follow him," and then they'll post the drill, and you go, "I'm going to do that drill with my students now. It's so good," and everyone's getting better because everyone's sharing.
Yeah, I'd say for myself, I started with karate, then went on to kickboxing, Thai boxing, and I find every martial art interests me. Like, not everything's suited for everyone, but if you can pick out the bits that work for you or the bits you like and put them together, it makes a better armory, I find.
It's a great line. It says like, everything you learn, you take back, and then you just call it your style. Like, you call it karate, you call it Tang Soo, you call it jiu-jitsu, because good martial is universal. If everyone's doing a certain move, like a straight punch, it's a good move. If you're the only martial art doing that move, it's probably not very good, because everyone else would be doing it if it was good.
Yeah, I think there's so many martial arts now. There's not enough days in a week to learn them all. I'd love to learn more, but
I like that idea that, like I said, I just picked up the jiu-jitsu. It's like, I can now learn this for as long as I want, and I'll never master it. Like, it's a whole thing. And I'm doing the sticks with Martin Zelato, and it's also endless. Like the Filipino, Eskrima arts, they're endless as well. It's wonderful. I'll give you this, Lee, because it's a really nice thing. Have you ever heard of the 3 types of happiness?
no, go on.
So there's 3 kinds. It's short, medium, and long, right? So short-term happiness, that's a roller coaster. That's a nice meal. That's like a night out with the boys, or whatever, yeah? It's very intense, but very short, right? Can't last forever. And then there's midterm happiness. Midterm happiness is a relationship with a job, a school, a university, even with your partner. It will get so high and then it will level off, right? So what's long-term happiness? Long-term happiness is a garden. Garden is very slow, moves very slowly. But the more work you put into your garden, the more it will grow with you. It will never stop giving back. And that's how I look at martial arts. It's this garden. You cannot like do martial arts for a day and go, "Yep, done that." No martial arts. You've got to do it for a lifetime, or sometimes 2 lifetimes. And then me and you have been doing it all the time we've been doing it, and we go, we still don't know anything. This it never ends giving. And then, like you say, an art ends or it finishes for whatever reason, you go, "I'll just do another one." Like, I just had a student go over to Australia, and he had the option to train Tang Soo. He went to the Tang Soo class once, and he kind of looked at it and went, "Yeah, our Tang Soo is, I prefer our Tang Soo." And now he's doing capoeira, and like, I'm so jealous of him because I've always wanted to do capoeira. And apparently he went in there and he told them he's seen only the strong, and now they've all embraced him. Go, "You've seen only the strong? You come and train capoeira." So when he gets back from Australia now, he's going to be an expert. Like, well, not an expert, but he's going to be proficient in capoeira, and he's going to teach me, and I'm going to learn capoeira. I can't wait. It's going to be amazing. Yeah.
I'm just going to throw a couple of random questions at you, if that's all right, Gus. Favourite kick?
Favorite kick? Basic kick is a side kick. I love a side kick. I think that if you've got a good side kick, no one can mess with you.
Yep. Your favourite kata or pattern, whatever you call them?
Oh, that's such a good question. My favorite kata at the moment is a kata called Rohai, and that's because it's got a headbutt in it, and not many forms have a headbutt in them. And I just love performing this headbutt in the form. In the demos, you pick up a board and you smash the board with your head, and it's a bit of fun. But I love a form with a headbutt.
Well, I'm just going to ask you, if there's any sort of youngsters watching, have you got any words for advice for them? Like, if they want to go down a sort of fight path, or they're misled at the minute and they want to get into something better, what words of advice can you give them?
In terms of if there's young people watching and they think about getting martial arts, that I would say there are 2 routes. There is the competitive angle, and again, like I said before, it's not about the martial arts, it's about the instructor. Find a good instructor, find a club with a good atmosphere, and you can do a competitive route, and you can really excel in that. if you want to get into martial arts, but you don't want to compete, there are other martial arts out there for you that still give you what I call pressure tests, things that we talked about before, gradings, tournaments, things that are difficult that you need to overcome. What I would say to people to steer away from is martial arts out there that just give you everything because you've given them money. Like what we would call McDojos, where they just bring you along every week, and every 3 months they seem to give you a presentation with a new thing, and then they charge you another thing. Because I think one of the problems with martial arts, and it's not like anything else, like for example, you don't go to the same restaurant every night, and you haven't got the same car you had when you were like 18 years old, right? We grow and we develop in our tastes. Whereas for a lot of people with martial arts, and it has this loyalty problem to it, where you go into a martial art and you do it very randomly because it's on your doorstep, and then you're stuck in that martial art. And I've talked to so many people who do not enjoy their martial art at all, but they keep going because they think there's something wrong with them. What I tell them is like, go to a bunch of martial arts. Like I was very lucky that my instructor and my parents, they let me do Aikido and Shotokan the same time I was doing Tang Soo. And there's nothing bad about those arts. Those arts are great. But every time I would do one of those arts, it would make me realize, oh, I'm actually in the art that suits me best. Tang Soo suits me best.
Yeah.
And I was just lucky with that. But again, if 6-year-old me was able to like try like 10 different clubs within a month of each other, I probably would have started martial arts when I was 6 years old. Instead, I had a horrible experience. I decided to leave, and something worse could have happened. I could have kept going there and become a thug. You see what I mean? Like a terrible thing could have happened to me where I could have become a way worse person. So my advice to people out there is, when you are looking for a martial arts club, if that's what you want to do, try a bunch. Don't commit. And if your instructor or anyone is telling you those things that we told you before, where you must train with us, you must sign up on the first day, and you're not allowed to train with other people, get away from there. They're toxic. You tell anyone, like if they were in a toxic relationship with, the girlfriend, boyfriend, partner, whatever, was saying to you, don't go there and don't talk to him and stay away from them. You tell your friend, like, get out of that relationship. Same with martial arts. If you've got someone telling you those things, you'd be like, run away.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. Like I said years ago, I always was just karate.
Yeah.
And I used to think judo, they don't even punch and kick. What a load of wussies they are.
Yeah, exactly.
Till when I was older and I went to judo.
And then you got thrown about and
thrown all around the room, smashed into that mat. And I think I got more injuries in judo than I ever had in stand-up fighting.
Yeah. I went to a Muay Thai class after I got my black belt, and I was just there kicking the bag, and everyone just looked at me and went, "Yeah, he's all right for a beginner." And I was just like, "I just got my black belt. Like, what's going on?" And it was just like I wasn't used to kicking like power kicks like that. It was just totally different, and just went, "Wow, it's just different flavors of the same tree."
So Gus, we start to wind it up there. I won't keep you any longer. But where can people find you if they want to find you, or they want to train with you, or get in contact with you?
Yeah, so again, I have a YouTube channel. It's just Heads of the Valleys Tang Soo. That's the name of my dojang. And on that YouTube channel, I've put things like, how to stretch, how to warm up, how to do techniques. I really want to use the YouTube channel to help people, and to put what I would consider not the best techniques, but perfectly complement techniques on there. But also I share my student successes. We put tournaments, grading, so you can see the journey. And the nice thing about it is, like I told you before, my mum recorded all those old VHSs of me. I've put all those of me as a white belt, me as an orange belt. So if anyone says like if they look at me like as someone like, oh, he's so good, you can look at me when I was terrible, and like everyone else, and you can see my journey from day one. So I have a YouTube channel, and then I have an Instagram called Tigger TSD, and then we're on Facebook as well. So you can find us anywhere. We have a website and things like that. And with the autism stuff, again, with your audience being as big as it is, I am really trying to help people include more students. So if I can help anyone directly with that, I would love to do that, because again, being a single person, single location, it's difficult to help that many people. But we now have about 30 autistic students, so it is growing. One day I hope to write like a how-to book, like how-to from an individual, and then another section of the book being as an instructor, and then there's another section as a parent as well, because a lot of the parents that come to me they look so lost that they can't help their child out, that they don't have the tools or equipment. And again, I don't know how school is run there. I haven't been to school for a very long time now. But I think in mainstream schools, especially, the pace of it and the demand for success is not the best place for these sort of students who struggle at the beginning. In my experience, everyone can be amazing. You just have to give them the right entry. So that is what I would say.
And thank you ever so much for spending some time with us. It's really appreciated, mate.
No, thank you, Lee. It's been an absolute pleasure. Cheers.
And I'm going to end this with a few of your moves you sent me to round it off.